The Pittsburgh Penguins have been sent tonight. Welcome back to Game Over Ottawa, everyone. I'm your host, Maude, and joining me today, I have Louis Boulet from the Zoobcast. How are you doing tonight, Louis?
Pretty good. I mean, given that the Sens won especially well, like that could have been disastrous, but we avoided it. Brady Tkachuk with a beautiful goal, and we're rolling.
Yeah, just a crazy game tonight. I think it was a bit of a roller coaster of emotions, but I think in the end, I think the Sens fan base is probably going to be coming away from that one pretty happy, especially overtime winners are so hype, especially having our captain score it. That was just an awesome moment. So I think that game gave us lots to talk about here today, and we'll also get into, there was some drama with the Sens earlier today. We had the Matthew Joseph drama, and we can discuss the return of Josh Norris as well. So should be an awesome show here tonight. We will just quickly get a word from our sponsor, Sports Interaction.
Think you know which way it's going to go? Make your bet with Sports Interaction. Whether it's hockey, football, or basketball, Sports Interaction has you covered. Bet pre-game, live and play, or on one of our many prop bets. Sports Interaction makes it easy to deposit, play, and cash out. Join now and see all that sports betting has to offer. Head to sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. That's sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. 19 plus, please play responsibly.
All right, so I think tonight we're gonna want to start it off with some positives. I think the main story for tonight has got to be the Sens power play, isn't it? Just four power play goals is pretty ridiculous, and I need to check if I still have this stat open. Yeah, it was the first time the Sens have scored 4 power play goals in a game since December 2005 against Toronto, where they scored 6 that night. That's from Ian Mendes on Twitter. So awesome night for the Sens power play, and I feel like they kind of needed a night like that, because even though the power play is really good on the season, like I feel like the last few games it was really slumping, eh?
Yeah, well, I mean, to be fair, it felt like everything was slumping the last few games, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's been much better. Obviously, getting Norris back and not having to roll basically an almost fully bottom 6 second unit is nice,
Yeah.
because now instead of having Brassard and, with all due respect to Lucchini, no Lucchini on the second unit. Now you get Giroux, who's always been there, but he's even more complemented by shooting threats like Pinto, like Norris, and then you have Sanderson there. Brassard was still on the unit. Maybe we could have, looked at. I've been advocating for Brandstrom on the second unit for a while now and running 2D there, but hey, it worked out today. Pinto scored on that. I think, was he the only second unit goal? I think
I
so.
think it was, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but still, it shows to how much more effective they were tonight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I felt like the second unit was generating way more chances than they have been lately, like you said, with those bottom 6 guys in there on the power play. It felt like DJ was just kind of screwed for options on the second unit for a while there, but getting Norris in there was awesome. I think, and we had 9 power play chances, and getting 4 for 9, like that's almost 50%, eh? Like just a little bit
Yeah.
under. I feel like that's so rare, and it feels weird for me to have a Sens team actually be that good on the power play. Like we probably haven't had that since like the pizza days.
Yeah, it's been so long since we've had this. Like I remember like very vividly still the days of the Sens being like, all right, where does the Sens power play start? Behind our own net. And then
Mm-hmm.
we couldn't get a zone entry at all. And then Tim Stützle came into the picture, and just all around the skill has grown to make it so that it's a legitimate threat. Like I don't know exactly where we are on the season within the league, but it's definitely one of our most favorable stats as a team. And I feel like that's very good to be able to have to fall back on. Obviously, it's going to help a lot on a night where you draw 9 power plays with, I think, two double minors. One of them was more of 2 penalties stacked on to each other, and the other with a double because of a high sticking damage to the face. But it's very, very good to be able to have, and it helps us being optimistic, looking towards the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And frustrating night for Mike Sullivan and the Penguins for sure too, because he was screaming on the bench like crazy.
Every time they cut to him, yeah,
Yeah, oh my God. So rough night for the Penguins there, but they still did get 5 power plays of their own. That was that evened it out a little bit. I feel like just because of it was those 2 double minors that really made the difference in terms of the stats, the overall opportunities. But one thing you mentioned about how it's always like before, when the Sens were on the power play, it's like, okay, we're starting behind our own net. I feel like we have that a little bit. We're like, I feel like we lose the draws a lot on the power play, but I feel like I see a lot of Shabbat skating back, picking it up. However, maybe that's just because he plays all the power play minutes. That he's going to spend a lot of time doing that. But one thing you mentioned, like potentially putting Brandstrom on the power play. I think a lot of people have been wanting to see that too. But I kind of feel like I'm starting to prefer Jake Sanderson over Thomas Chabot
I'd say
on the power play.
On top. Yes, yeah. I would have said more like on top of Sanderson, like you run 2D on the second unit.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I could definitely see the argument for switching Chabot off the first unit and putting in Sanderson there, because Sanderson has been more mobile anyway in the O zone, and we were able to see that a ton today in general, because he was just off the zone entries, darting in, getting chances even deeper, activating into the play, going around, really trying to scan and find a best possible option instead of, stopping and being forced to dump it in. So it's been really nice to see him develop that kind of creativity and confidence with the puck, which really aligns with how his development has been over the last few years. Like I remember scouting him a little over the 2020 season, and it's the same thing. And even when he joined North Dakota too, which by the way, shout out North Dakota with my
nice,
North
nice.
Dakota hoodie
I
too.
didn't even notice that.
I mean, it's hard to see with the mic, right?
Yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, that's the thing. Sanderson, it takes him around like until 2/3 into the season at his new level, then you really start to see him get that confidence rather than just staying with the steady plays and all that stuff. But now he's really starting to be able to show the potential offensive upside there, and if you can really build on top of it, you're making a really good case for one of the strongest left sides in the league, possibly.
Yeah, I never watched any full games when Sanderson was at UND, but I would always see the highlights, and he was always working it around on the power play. Like I really liked his quarterbacking ability on that second unit, and it's probably nitpicking here tonight with how successful the power play was, and Shabbat did get 3 power play assists. But is it just me, or does Shabbat kind of bobble the puck a lot at the point, or like there's a lot of passes that just kind of hop over his stick? I don't know what it is, but I feel like that happens a lot with him specifically. Is it just me?
No, not really. I feel like more recently too, well, especially today, there was one sequence where I think Shabbat bobbled it, passed it off to Stutzla, then he bobbled it a little, passed
Yeah.
it back to Shabbat, he gave it up, then Jeff Carter came back the other way, he bobbled it on the shot. It was just, it was awful everywhere. But I do see where you're coming from. It has been a little bit rougher in terms of puck handling at the point. I do think that gets ironed out just because Shabbat is just that skilled, right? And it's been a tough season at the start. The last few games have been a little less than optimal, but that's the thing. He's going to bounce back. It's Thomas Chabot. He's our star defenseman, and I'm just waiting to be able to see him to come back to top pair shape. It doesn't help that he hasn't had a stable partner the entire year, right? Like Zub's had injury woes going back for so long. Do we even know what his injury situation is? Because I haven't heard about it.
Yeah, I have no clue. All I saw was that he was retroactively placed on IR with the date. Like it went on today, but it was retroactive to the date of the 14th, which was, I guess, was the Colorado game. But I have literally no clue what the injury is, so I haven't seen anything either. Which that sucks when you don't even get any details on an injury. I feel like that kind of implies that it could be something that keeps him out for a little bit if they don't say right away.
Yeah, that's tough. At least we got Jacob Bernard-Docker today.
Yeah.
He had a decent game. There was a few defensive zone retrievals that maybe could have been a little bit more urgency, or a little, I noticed a lot of times he was scanning properly. The thing is, he was taking so long to do it that by the time he got to the puck and he had fully mapped out the ice and kind of figured out what he wanted to do with his play next, he was already getting pressured, which caused, bobbles or forced passes that didn't make it for a possible clean full exit. But it's just, how many games has it been since he's been called up now?
Is it? I think it's just the 2, because he got called up after Zub got hurt. Yeah.
Yeah. So he hasn't had much of a long time to get back reacclimated into the NHL again. Again, it's going to take time, but being thrust on the top pair is not the easiest job, right? But I much prefer it over a lot of the alternatives.
Yeah, I'm really hoping they give him a strong run of games here. We were talking about it last show. When Zub comes back, and Zaitsev is also injured, so when he comes back as well, we're really hoping that JBD sticks in there, and you know, we can keep Zaitsev as sort of like the 7th D, because this is just, I think at this point in the season, you just got to play the young guys and get them acclimated at the NHL level.
I wonder if Holden gets scratched at any point. Like I think I still think I'd rather Holden on the third pair right D rather than Zaitsev. Obviously Zaitsev's going to end up playing higher because knowing DJ Smith's preferences of where to place him in the lineup.
Yeah.
But Holden has really lost a step, man. He got burned today by was it Zucker? I don't quite remember, but it was some point in the third where he just got darted by so easily. And then, or was it the second? Actually, I don't remember. It was second half of the game. And Pittsburgh just got a clean chance, and luckily they fanned on didn't really have much of a chance on it. But yeah, it's been a little bit tough for Holden. The guy seems like an absolute gem, all the content that he posts, but this season has definitely been a step back, especially in terms of skating for him. But he's getting up there in age, right? Like I think this is also the last year in his contract, I believe.
I think so.
So we might not see him again after this season.
Yeah, I definitely agree about Holden. I was surprised by his game last year. Because I wasn't really expecting much from him. I feel like he's kind of a guy that people don't really know much about league wide. So when we traded Dadonov for him, I was like, oh, that's just kind of weird. Like I guess they had scouted him, and it's not someone who was necessarily on anyone's radar for a defensive pickup for the Sens, but he was pretty solid last year. But I definitely do agree that I think he is losing a step. If it is the last year of his contract, which I think it is, I'm hoping maybe we can get a pick for him at the deadline, you know, and then you'll just have, like, hopefully if everyone's healthy, like, I guess Zaitsev has to come back in. Not that we definitely want Zaitsev in the lineup, but get him playing. Maybe he can raise his value a little bit more going into the off season, and maybe someone will want to take on the rest of his contract at that point. And then you know,
at
JVD
least it'll be easier to move him at least next year in terms of Zaitsev, because at that point you're hitting the 1 year threshold where it's so much easier to be able to project out your cap situation if you're GM looking to take him on, whether it's for like to take on picks too or whatever. But as soon as you hit the multi-year threshold, there's too many variables that so many GMs are going to back off and be like, no, I don't want to take the risk, right? But now you're getting to the point where once you hit that 1 year term, it's like, okay, maybe we can really consider bringing this guy in, hopefully adding in some picks. If you're the other team, if you're the Sens, you're really hoping you don't give up too much and you can offload that contract.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm looking at Holden's numbers right now, and that's the thing. He still had good defensive metrics, like in terms of quantity and quality suppression, even before the Sens got him, which I remember a little seeing, but it has definitely taken a step back since then. Especially, well, not quite as much. I'm looking at some of his transition defense metrics, and he's very much allowing more chances off the rush, not breaking up as much when it comes to preventing the opposition from entering the zone. So you can really tell even in the data that it's starting to trend. Well, it's continuing, I guess, to trend downwards for Holden, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, in terms of players who are kind of trending down lately, I think we do have to talk about Cam Talbot a little bit tonight too, because I do feel like, unfortunately, he was kind of the only reason that this game was close, to put it bluntly.
In the worst way.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like, I flip-flop on our goalies all the time. Like, I feel like I come on for one game and I'm like, damn, that goalie was great tonight, and then I come on for the next game. It's like the next game right after they play 2 in a row, and then it's like, oh, yeah, he was not good tonight. Like, it's what's your take on the Senators' goaltending overall, really?
I mentioned this on the last Zoomcast episode, and I feel like it's going to come soon because we have a lot of Cam Talbot fans that I know who listen. But I've always been a Forsberg head, and so I do think at minimum you should play them both into a fairly regular rhythm. That way they can get some stability going, because that's very important when it comes to goaltending, is to at least get some sort of base foundation down. That way you can, get into the games much better. There's not as much of a warm-up speed effect. You're always got the same routine down. So the fact that we're kind of riding right now, it's not really riding the hot goalie, because no goalie is being hot currently.
We haven't been able to do that.
Yeah, I still think Forsberg should get more games in, and I feel like he will, given Talbot's performance today, unfortunately for him. But he did have a bad game, Forsberg, against Colorado. Talbot bad today. One thing I will say though is that Talbot was in an environment in Minnesota last year that really fit his play style decently well.
Mm-hmm.
I've been working on some analysis to try to compare goalies whatever types of shots, whatever type of movement stats that follow them, and their team fit that would ideally minimize or maximize the shots that they're weak or strong against. And Minnesota is actually second on Talbot's rank, whereas Ottawa is 20th.
Oh, wow.
So you're really starting to see that trend downwards. And in the other way, Gustafsson actually had Ottawa last
Oof.
in his team fit. So the fact that he's doing so well with Minnesota now is not the biggest surprise either. Like I'm still sad we traded away Gus because he's one of my favorite players on the Sens the last few years. But yeah, in summary, I really just hope we get more Forsberg games because I love the guy. And in general, I feel like it will be better for the team if you're more evenly splitting anyway or trending towards that direction when you're deploying your goalies.
Yeah, I'd like to hear a little bit more about those stats you're talking about. So how exactly do you come up with those rankings?
A lot of it is looking at specifically how a team's defensive metrics are distributed.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm looking at how much they're giving up in terms of passing plays, screen shots, dead angle shots, what percent of their shots are coming off the rush versus cycle, how many of it is low danger versus medium danger. And you specifically, I've one of the stats I measured is reaction speed. So how fast is a goalie is being able to react to shots that are tipped or deflected.
Mm-hmm.
And Talbot is bottom 25th percentile in the league.
Oh, wow.
And the Sens give up top 25th percentile in the league most of those shots. So that's really not helping his case. A lot of his shot absorption tonight was also not there, which doesn't help. Like I feel like all four of the goals against could have either been caught by his glove or really just absorbed better with his body.
Mm-hmm.
And it's weird because you would never see like four goals like that all by the same goalie in one game. It was kind of an extraordinary disaster in a way. Obviously didn't end up costing us, which is maybe even more impressive, honestly. But it really is a bad game. Obviously we've seen Talbot be much better. That's the thing, is he's not the most consistent goalie. Like his ratio of poor games to great games is maybe a little bit more favoring more inconsistent than Forsberg, where you're seeing more of those fine to average decent games. But yeah, again, if you're really trying to maximize their potential here, split up the starts as much as you can until maybe you really see one of them really pop off. Then you can start favoring him a little. But yeah, getting a routine down, some sort of stability is where I see the most success coming for.
Yeah, I definitely noticed earlier in the season with Talbot pretty quickly that he seems to have like really high highs and then really low lows. I remember the first time I noticed it this season was a game against the first game against Vancouver. I think it was they beat us 6-4 in our own barn, and it was like the game before that, the first couple games before that, Talbot was just playing amazing, and then that game it was like 6 goals on like 24 shots. So it's an interesting thing with Talbot that the consistency, I guess, I would say Forsberg is a little bit more consistent, whereas Talbot is more likely to steal you a game, but then he seems almost kind of more likely
he has much higher highs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And one thing I've also looked at with Talbot is I feel like some of those lows for Talbot especially come earlier in the games, and then he really starts to heat up. Obviously, that wasn't as much on display today. It was just pretty flat meh all around, or maybe even worse. But yeah, like I have Talbot's early performance in games and early in periods around bottom 25th percentile, then his play later on jumps up to like 80th, which is really interesting to be able to see him elevate that much. And it's great because it's kept us in games a lot early on in the season. But the problem is, again, we weren't getting the scoring support at all. Because remember that long stretch where we just couldn't score with the net empty? That was brutal. So it's nice to be able to have that option, but then again, you'd like to see a little more consistency across the board, ideally.
Yeah, at least we actually got the goal support for our goalies for once tonight. Like, especially after the St. Louis game where, Talbot had that one gaff, but he only allowed 2 goals, and we just couldn't get it done for him. Like, that was a game that was totally winnable against St. Louis. So even though Talbot was kind of the reason that it was even close today. At least we were able to make it up for him and actually grind out a hard fought win. Now, to shift the conversation a little bit, we definitely got to talk about Josh Norris, finally back in the lineup. And it was a conversation on Twitter today when it was mentioned that Norris would not be taking any face-offs and Giroux would be taking them all. So then people are kind of getting scared of, like, is he really 100%? And are you kind of feeling that way too, kind of questioning it?
Yeah, at that point, it's like, why are you forcing it? I don't really get the point, because I feel like my expectation anyway going into this season, and I've repeated this countless times, is that I didn't expect this team to make the playoffs necessarily. Obviously, it'd be great, and you want to get some important games played down the stretch to really be able to show some sort of progress. But we're at the point where it doesn't really look very feasible. I know we're only at the halfway mark, and anything's really possible. And getting Josh Norris back is huge. But here I feel like you really got to prioritize the long-term health of your possible 40 goal scorer. Like, especially when it's someone who relies so much on shots where you absolutely slap the puck in the ice.
Yeah.
Like, that could possibly wear down your shoulder.
Huge shoulder movement
like
on all those one-timers.
In your first game back. Yeah, that's the thing. So I don't get, I was joking with Adam today about how he's not going to take any faceoffs, but he's still going to take one-timers from the circle. It's like, what's the difference here?
Yeah.
Why is he even playing? Like, I know you don't want to get him into more situations where he just re-injured or where he's first injured his shoulder, and same for Pinto, right? It was the same exact way, just off a face-off. But I just don't get playing him. You're almost at a point where I think if you wait another 2 weeks, sure, he misses 7 games, or maybe just wait a little longer until his shoulder's fine. But if you wait 2 weeks specifically, you got another week and a half, 3 with no games that coincides with the All-Star break.
That's true. It's a huge break coming up, yeah.
So maybe with that, you're able to really fully 100% be certain that it'll be fine, and then you get him to take faceoffs. Obviously, the fact that he's taking faceoffs or not is not the part that bothers me. It's just that he's clearly not 100% if you're not allowing him to take faceoffs. And it doesn't really... I just don't really get the logic behind it. I get that they're trying to really make a push in something, but it just doesn't seem very feasible right now, to the point where you'd be placing Josh Norris's partially recovered, but mostly recovered shoulder in jeopardy.
Yeah, like, it makes sense to me that they would have him go easy on the faceoffs just because of what happened to Pinto last year. They definitely don't want to see that same situation. But you bring up a great point about how can they determine that it might be unsafe to take faceoffs, but it's totally safe for like any other contact, basically, and ripping those one-timers. That's definitely a weird distinction that, I don't know, maybe the team doctors have the reason that we're not privy to, but it's definitely...
I was going to say, I don't have any medical experience, so I can't really speak to that. Like, I'm a stats guy. Like, I'm studying stats. I don't have anything medically wise, but it just seems off, right? Like, it doesn't seem right to be able to not allow him to do face-offs, but everything else, checking wise, one-time wise, is perfectly good and in play.
Yeah, I think it's just a lot of paranoia after what happened to Pinto last year. Like, it would be a complete disaster if we had basically the same incident with Norris just re-injuring the shoulder again. Because I remember, I think they said at the beginning of the season when he got hurt, it was basically a choice between rehabbing or getting surgery. And they had said that if he got the surgery, he probably wouldn't play again for the whole season. So that's why they decided to go the rehab route, get him back in there. But I feel like even with choosing the rehab route, I feel like this is earlier than anyone really expected. So, but I feel like that happens.
There were rumors that he wouldn't come back, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
There were parts where it's like, we'd be lucky to even have him back. So I don't know. We could even see him still do surgery in the summer, which a lot of NHLers have done, where they just rehab for the season. Then over the offseason, they do that. Hopefully be back in time for preseason, maybe miss a month or two of the regular season, but then you're right back into it. It's just, I don't know, like, you're at a point where you really just got to prioritize long-term health.
Yeah. Well, regardless, he is back. Did you like his game tonight?
I think he was solid. I think there was a little bit of rust on the one-timers, which every time he took a 1T, I was a little
just
scared.
Grimacing every time.
Yeah, but no, he was good. He really helped that second unit. this season in general and today too, he was helping a lot more when it comes to breaking the puck out, which is nice. I still find the line combinations in the top six a little weird in the sense that you have your two prime shooters on the same line, and you have a great playmaker with Giroux there to really help them out. But the problem is, I feel like if you're going to break up that incredible line of Tkachuk, Stützle, Giroux, you maybe try to get DeBrincat with Stützle instead.
Yes.
And because I know they broke that up in preseason, but that's because it didn't work in like one or two preseason games. This DeBrincat, Norris, and Giroux / Batherson line or whatever has not really been the most effective throughout almost all of the regular season games up to this point this season. So I don't know if I agree with the deployment that they've got going. I don't know what I would do myself. I think I still would prefer to keep that Tkachuk, Stützle, Giroux line because they've been so good. Like I'd say they've been a top 5 line in the NHL so far this season. Like Stützle has obviously been incredible, and that was displayed by his goal. Like my God, that was insane today.
Ridiculous.
Like his skating is just so incredible. Like draft year Stützle totally would have maybe stopped, spun around, and gone back towards the boards there because he was pushed off to the perimeter a ton. But seeing him attack the middle like that, open his hips, really allow him to use his agility and his skating to explode towards the middle. And that's not anyone that he's exploiting to the middle against. That's Sidney Crosby.
Yeah, absolutely burned Crosby.
And then just a beautiful shot in the high slot. Like he was able to identify that open lane down the middle and just completely take advantage of it. Obviously, it was on the power play, so that's probably why there was so much room, but still the fact that he was able to make that play is just incredible.
Yeah, he saw that open space and he took it. I love the aggression on that play, the explosiveness in his skating as well. Just beautiful stuff from Timmy. And I totally agree about the line combos. I did actually think that the Norris, DeBrincat, and Giroux line was our best line 5-on-5 today, but I do have a similar sentiment to you in terms of wanting to see the top six a little bit different. I do want to see DeBrincat with Stützle as well. I feel like that's what everyone was dreaming of in the summer, and we just haven't really seen it yet. And since Stützle has been playing with Giroux as well, I feel like it could be an easier transition to put DeBrincat, Stützle, and Giroux, because at least you have two of those guys already playing together, and then we already know that Tkachuk, Norris, and Batherson can be a great line.
From last year. Yeah.
I kind of thought that that's what they were going to do right away, was put Norris back in with Tkachuk and Batherson, because it's putting him in with guys that he's used to playing with. I noticed today, like on both even strength and on the power play units, Norris has never played with any of these players before outside of the preseason and the first 5 games of the year. Like he's out there with DeBrincat, Giroux, and then on the power play with Sanderson, Brassard, and Pinto as well. Like it's totally new for Josh Norris. So it's a little bit, it can be a little bit tough for him to try to get used to new line mates. So I would kind of like to see him back with Tkachuk and Batherson.
Yeah, I agree. Honestly, like I think that's the way, and that's what we had going into preseason, and it hasn't really been tried out at all in the regular season. So, DJ Smith, make it happen, please. That'd be great.
Yeah. All right.
If you're listening to this, DJ, come on.
I'm sure he does. I'm sure that he does his post-game interviews and then he hops on to Game Over Ottawa.
Yeah. He thanks the Gambrell line and then he's like, all right, time to tune in.
Hell yeah. All right, so we've got just a few minutes left here. We definitely got to talk about the Matthew Joseph scratch because this was the source of all the drama today. I feel like everyone was at first speculating that it was just like DJ's choice and that he didn't want to put Joseph in ahead of everyone else. And then the narrative kind of shifted to, well, maybe it was sort of a discipline thing. Of course, they didn't say anything and they just left it all up to speculation for the fan base, which is kind of what bothered me about it, because I feel like, for example, if a player is late for a team meeting, when we've seen those things happen in the NHL before, I feel like teams and coaches, they just say it. They just tell the media right away. Just say, yeah, this is the situation. This guy isn't going to play tonight. And then there's not really much drama at all. But then they didn't really give us any details today. And then, of course, you have the whole factor with Joseph's family and friends being able to make it out to this game. And then he's not playing. Only his brother was playing. So at least they had that. At least they got to watch his brother. But
they were cheering for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, definitely tonight. So hopefully we get more details on this, but it left a sour taste in my mouth. I feel like even if for example, it was something about being like late to a meeting or practice or something like that, it might be just me being too soft, but I feel like just because Joseph had everyone coming to visit for this game, I feel like you should have let it slide. Like, if I was the coach, I'd be like, okay, you got 50 people coming to the game. We can, punish you later, sort of, but like, tonight is your night. Like, you have to have him in the lineup. I feel like we don't know what happened, but do you kind of agree with that he should have just played anyway?
Yeah, it's true that we don't know what truly happened, but it does feel like awfully weird timing to have that happen, especially today. And they've made it clear that it wasn't like I don't know. It seems like they've created kind of drama out of nothing.
Yeah.
Because they could have said, "Oh, maybe he's not ready" or whatever. But clearly, it seems like they're trying to send a message almost, which I don't get. Like again, we don't know what happened, but like if you're looking at specifically, oh, maybe they did just scratch him, like because they felt like they had a better bottom six. Come on. Like,
yeah,
I'm sorry, but
no shot.
This bottom six has not been the answer. Like, sure, Joseph has taken a step back since last year, but he's still got that very diverse profile in terms of being very good in transition while still being a very good checker and still having some solid passing and playmaking numbers. Again, his finishing has not been nearly there. And I've seen the comparisons with, but Nick Paul is doing so well in Tampa. First of all, Matthew Joseph is getting some horrible zone start deployment and some really bad quality of teammates and playing at some really good competition. Nick Paul is having, I think I have him at around the 98th percentile in terms of finishing in the league this season.
Jeez.
With the same level of individual creation and off-puck support. So it really is just a lot of probably very good passing skill from his line mates. He's also got really, his quality of teammates is incredibly high.
I think he's playing with Stamkos lately, right?
Yeah, like that's the thing. You're playing, it's such an elevated role in terms of teammates and opportunities. And the thing, it's not like he's creating all those chances by himself or being more of an option than he usually is. It's just he's finishing on so much more of them. And given that contract, because that is still 7 years, right? But hey, he's on pace for 30 goals. All the best to him. We still love Nick Paul here. But I don't know. I still really like Joseph, and it feels odd to have this all happen right now. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see really what happens, but it does leave a sour taste in my mouth, as you said.
Yeah, I was really excited to see Joseph back in the lineup. I totally agree with you. He just brings such a unique skill set to the team. So I'm really hoping he can get into that game and actually get to play against his brother next. Luckily, we're playing Pittsburgh again right away, so at least it's not that big of a deal, although I'm sure it was much easier for the family and friends to all come up to Ottawa because
they were probably 50 people.
Assumably,
that's going to be tough.
Presumably coming from Quebec, right? That's a lot harder to get them all to Pittsburgh, but I hope at least some of them can make it down there to Pittsburgh for that game and get to see both of them playing because we really want
Matty Joe
scratched. Yeah, we really want Matty Joe back in the lineup here. It's we could really use that depth. And just right before we wrap it up, I do want to ask you, who would you scratch for Joseph to put him back in if you had to pick one guy?
Oh God, the options.
Yeah, it's just pick it. You got so many choices.
I listen, probably Austin Watson.
Yeah,
just because you haven't really seen anything effective at him. Like Kelly still has a little bit of forechecking upside. So does Cass. Like Kelly actually has decent adjusted defensive suppression numbers, which is fine. But Watson's pretty much a non-factor everywhere. Like he still does bring that physicality, but I just don't see the upside to playing him there. Like you already have Kellick and Castley there for the physicality. Gambrell exists.
Yeah.
Derek Brassard is there too, but I don't know. I feel like Watson is maybe the biggest. I don't want to say detriment because that's mean.
I definitely agree with you though. Watson is he's kind of behind the play a lot. So I don't think DJ will do it though. I think it's not going to be him. But no. Yeah, we're running out of time here, so just going to wrap it up quickly. Be sure to check out Louis on the Zoobcast. Anything else you wanted to plug or? No, that's about it. Thanks a lot for having me on. Follow me on Twitter at Louis_Boulet_, and we'll see. Maybe the Sens can build off this. Who knows? Yeah, awesome show tonight. Love to have you on again sometime after this. Thanks for watching, everyone. Leave a like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to SDPN, and that'll be all for tonight.